E is for Every Day by Tofu. Hard lesson. Just another day in the wasteland. I fiddled awkwardly with the weapon held in my forehouse while I waited, fighting the impulse to start swirling it, lest I butcher every pony standing around me. It was a halberd I found in the course of a pony that had been wearing an ancient set of Royal Guard armor, which I likewise taken for myself. Where I found it, I had to make do with a combat knife tied to a piece of bent and twisted rebar. So this has definitely been a step up in terms of quality. What's on your mind, Caltrop? You look worried. I turned to face a unicorn mare with a coat so bright green that just looking at her made my mouth pucker. She had a soft, chestnut brown mane that was mostly obscured by a black helmet seating on her head, save for a few rogue curls that had been poked up by her forehead. Combat armor of the same color protected her chest, and a little white emblem that had been painted on the breast, the paw print of a griffin's hind leg, logo of the company of mercenaries he was employed with. No, Perot, I shrugged. I got a bad feeling about this, that's all. My belly's been doing backflips for the past 10 minutes. Worried? Perot cocked her head to the side, her features softening in concern. That's not like you. You're always raring to go. Yeah, I guess, I sighed, averting my gaze and focusing on the thriving crowds around us. People of all walks busted around us as we stood waiting for our companion to return. We are smack dab in the middle of a tiny community at the center of Buxton Sanctuary. The city's last major center of population. It was an old port city located on Equestria's east coast, and a peek into the metropolitan life in the time before the Great War. Buxton had never been hit by a direct megaspell blast, but the residual fallout had reduced the city and its surrounding areas into a wasteland just the same as the rest of Equestria, leaving nothing behind but a massive ghost town ripe for resettling. A few months ago, a local Steel Ranger contingent had engaged in open conflict with a group of Pegasi that had defected from the Conclave in order to further their own agenda, demolishing much of the outer city in the process. Craters and ruined buildings could be seen on nearly every street, the debris from some of the skirmishes piling up so high in places that travel was made completely impossible. At the very center of the city, however, everything was still intact and a burgeoning hub of commerce. Day in and day out, ponies traveled through Sanctuary to trade, seek work, purchase supplies for travel, or even acquire medical aid, or take up residence in the many unoccupied floors of the massive black obelisk of an office building at the city center. The tower was the tallest structure in the entire city, and functioned as a hospital, a headquarters for the local Talon Company, and a shelter for those who needed it. The citizens of Sanctuary were protected by a local Talon Company, a city in Equestria, a Griffin-run mercenary group that made its home in that building. The largest office building in the city, from which they derived their name, Craig Razorbeak, the Talon's leader, was a philanthropist as it was possible to be in this day and age, and every ounce of effort into keeping his people safe from threats, whether it be encroaching raiders or enslavers, or Steel Rangers. A sudden commotion caused Perot and I to turn, and the two of us watched as a small scene unfolded across the street from us. A sudden fracas had erupted right in the middle of the merchant district, the inner circle of a roundabout at the middle of the city, on the sidewalk surrounding a small park of its center. As we looked on, a pair of griffins wearing armor with the same logo as Perot's accosted a shady-looking earth pony stallion in a trench coat. One of them, a burly thug with a snow-white coat and crimson accents at the tips of its muddy brown feathers, seized the stallion's foreleg in one beefy claw, causing a cascade of tiny little containers to fall out from within his coat. Pony is trying to make a quick clap, slinging drugs. That's another day in the wasteland. Dash dealer, Perot murmured as the griffins hauled the earth pony away, ignoring his protests and claims of innocence. I thought Magnus had better things to do than patrol Sanctuary for chem dealers. Oh well, maybe Razorbeak and that guy he's traveling with finally made some headway on their search, so he's back to his usual duties. Razorbeak was the griffin in charge of the city in Equestria, Perot's boss, and even I knew the other guys he mentioned. In fact, I was supposed to have helped the two of them hunt some pony down, by getting caught up in the moment when I met Perot and her partner, who hired her for her services. Rolling a shoulder in a shrug, I turned away from the scene as the small crowd that had gathered began to disperse. Like many of the people bustling around Sanctuary, we were here for a reason. In our case, that was work. The leader of our little group was currently out seeing to that, while we sat waiting for him in the middle of town, just idly twiddling our hose. "Hey ladies, I got it!" A male voice said from behind me, and I turned to see a unicorn stallion approaching on a small piece of paper, held aloft in his charcoal gray telekinetic field. Combat armor, similar to Perot's, partially concealed his periwinkle blue coat, and the golden tresses of blonde mane spilled down to his neck, the dim cloud-filtered sunlight glinting as radiantly as was possible off its many waves. Slung across his chest was a bandolier loaded with several different bolt types, and across his back was the crossbow he used to fire them. I thought it was rather unorthodox weapon in this day and age, but considering the fact that my own weapon of choice was a polearm, who the hell was I to judge? "Hey, Longhorn," Perot and I chanted by way of greeting as the stallion approached. "What's up?" Longhorn said, as he slowed to a stop, looking between me and Perot while he waited for an explanation. "What the lone faces?" "Kaltot's worried," Perot explained, placing her hose reassuringly on my shoulders and resting her chin gently atop of my head. "I am not," I snapped defensively, hopping out from Perot. "I just got butterflies in my tummy, that's all." "Thanks, anxiety, Caltrop," Perot explained patiently. "You're worried. There's no reason to be worried, hon. We've been working together for long enough now for you to know that."
"Nerd, I need a spotter, please."
Perot's right. Longhorn agreed with a nod. "Just another day in the wasteland for us, kid. We'll take care of this little job. Use the cash to buy a good meal and restock. Then it's on to the next one. Nature's an everyday thing here, but we'll just deal with it like we always do. Come on. We overcome it with teamwork."
I felt my ears droop. "Yeah, but..."
"Come on,"
Longhorn said, resting a hoof over my armor's shoulders and giving me a little shake.
"What's gotten into you, Caltrop? You're almost the most enthusiastic out of all of us to take a job, especially when it involves combat."
"We're going to see some action?" I asked, immediately feeling my spirits begin to lift.
"Yep,"
the buck beside me answered with a grin, laying me the paper he'd been carrying in front of my face.
"Doesn't go into detail, but the client promises a huge reward for a tough fight. We need to meet with him on his property to discuss the details, but it can't be too tough. The coordinates are nowhere near hexbound territory, so whatever it is we have to fight, could well be within our ability to handle."
I glanced at the paper and felt my jaw drop to a shock. Wow, that's a lot of zeros. I shifted uncomfortably as I weighed the job against the payout. "Longhorn, something about this ain't adding up. It ain't right. We should walk. A reward that fucking big means it's probably gonna get us killed."
"We won't know until we try, right?"
Lightbone Unicorn said, giving my shoulders a comforting squeeze.
"At the very least, we get to see what the client needs done. It'll only be a little bit of time. And if we come back at the hoof, we can always bunk in the EQ tower for the night."
"Oh, all right, I guess," I agreed uncertainly. I still had a really bad feeling about this job.
"Come on, you two. We'll lose the daylight,"
Longhorn said, steering me towards Sanctuary's entry gates.
"The sooner we get this one over with, the sooner we can get some decent food in our stomachs. I'm starving."
"You're always starving." Perot snickered playfully as he fell in the step behind us. "I swear you got a hollow leg."
"Says the mayor who scoffed down a whole case of sugar apple bottles in 15 minutes,
Longhorn teased. "I work my flank off here, you jerk. Anything I eat doesn't get the chance to stick around for very long. There's an ounce of fat below my neck." I felt my eyes drift down to linger on Perot's flank. I sort of lost focus on the conversation as I stared intently at her cutie mark. A large ammunition box with a trio of shotgun shells lay in front of it. It was less the cutie mark I was interested in, and more of the particular piece of anatomy that it was using as a backdrop. I felt a subtle stirring below as I took into view, each movement of her leg causing the muscles in her flank to tense, emphasizing her tone apply in the most pleasant of ways. She wasn't kidding. There wasn't an ounce of fat on there to jiggle. "You're catching flies, Caltrop," Pearl said with a knowing smirk, playfully brushing beneath my chin with her tail,
was affording me another glimpse that I suspected wasn't entirely unintentional.
Busted,
Longhorn cackled wickedly. Shut up! I snapped, throwing my hoof playfully into Longhorn's side, causing him to exhale and wheeze.
Oof! Longhorn grunted. Easy, kid. Sheesh. You hit hard for a mare your size.
Yeah, and don't forget, Longhorn, I growled, pulling aside a huge lock of vanilla-white mane that had fallen into my eyes. I've been looking out for myself since I was a little filly. I didn't have no pony to do it for me, so I had to teach myself how to fight. You build a lot of strength slinging around a piece of rebar all day, let me tell you.
It shows,
Longhorn murmured, massaging his tender side gingerly.
What's it so hard to find a ladylike mare around here? I swear it's nothing but warrior mares or crazy raider chicks. What's a guy gotta do to find the type of mare who needs help moving a cows these days?
My reply was cut short by a sudden, unearthly droning hum that set my teeth on edge. The fuck? I wondered aloud. My answer showed up a moment later as the hum increased in intensity. It became a loud roar. Something above us eclipsed what little sunlight managed to get through the cloud cover, and I looked skyward to see a massive black warship streak overhead, heading in the direction of the bay, just off of Buxton's coast. I'd never seen one before, but damn near every pony had heard of them. It was a cloud ship, an Enclave cloud ship. Is that a raptor? Perrault gasped with utter astonishment. What's the Enclave doing here? Why are they below the clouds?
I don't think they have business with us wasteland folk,
Longhorn said, pointing at the ship as it streaked off towards the wire.
Whatever its goal is, it's either overseas or on the sea.
Longhorn cast his gaze downward, holding a hoof to his chin thoughtfully.
Still, one in Equestria would bring the Enclave down here to the wasteland, with a warship to boot. I think we might be missing an important piece of the puzzle.
Have you heard? We all turned to face a passerby that heard our conversation and spoken up. The Enclave has finally made their move. Carolot's gone. Leveled. They've already seized Friendship City, and the most recent news suggests their fleet is locked in combat with Red Eye's forces over the Everfree Forest. If I were you guys, find someplace safe to hole up before they attack us. The three of us exchanged nervous glances as the stranger went on her way. None of us knew what it meant for the Enclave to be below the clouds, but it sure as hell wasn't good. Even less so, they already destroyed the ruins of Carolot and assaulted Friendship City. Red Eye could go shit in a head for all I cared, but they attacked a populated city that didn't bode well for us here in Buxton. Definitely explains Caltrop's unease, Perrault murmured as she continued to gaze at the now empty skies. What'll you do, Longhorn? I'm bound by my contract, so you got me until your payment dries up.
Well, Longhorn sighed. Looks like we're going to need that money for something much more important than food. If this turns out to be a full-scale assault on us, we're going to need all the supplies we can get our hooves on. That means guns, ammo, medical supplies, and anything else we need to keep ourselves alive.
Still doing the job then? Perrault asked with a wide grin and a raised eyebrow.
Yep,
Longhorn replied, and I quickly slung my halberd across my back, rushing to catch up as he started off a canter.
Double time, everybody. Let's move!
You sure that's the place? Perrault asked as we paused at Rose End. It looks spooky as all get out.
Longhorn took a quick peek at the map. Yeah, I think so. A little creepy, isn't it?
From where we were standing, we could hear the sound of surf crashing against the shore. Indeed, where we stood was only a hop, skip, and a jump from the water. Abandoned shorefront property surrounded us all on the sides, but the unsettling log house that Longhorn and Perrault had spoken of was immediately to our right. The remains of the small seaside amusement park practically oozed foreboding. Small games kiosks were either shuttered or boarded up, and those that weren't broken into and searched for valuables long ago. Within some, I could see faded targets for dart games, some still decorating with dangling bits of rubber that had once been inflated balloons. Unclaimed prizes in the form of ratty old stuffed animals still hung from walls and ceilings, and I noted with some amusement that one kiosk had collapsed, but its target of stacked milk bottles still stood tall after 200 years. Behind the massive arcade near the roadside, the closest building to us currently, the tallest of the old rise rose up high enough for us to see. A particular note were a roller coaster and a massive Ferris wheel. Both of which had been partially, not completely consumed by rust, due in no small part of the salty sea air. Directly ahead of us was a massive pier that stretched into the ocean. Wooden posts protruding out of the water near the far end, suggesting that its end had been much farther out than it was currently. Much to my surprise, it was pretty damn long to begin with. The whole place was just an eerie reminder of what used to be. This had once been a place of amusement, fun, a place that shared good times here centuries ago. And all that was left was a weathered ruin that some point deeper than me would probably see as a commentary on the horrors of war, using fancy words like juxtaposition or some shit. The affair was pretty fucking creepy. I haven't expected ghost parties to fade into view and to start walking around, going about their lives like nothing had happened.
So, where the fuck are we supposed to go, Longhorn? I asked, when no party moved or spoke up. We ain't gonna get jack shit done just standing around all day.
Longhorn stirred within a knicker and shook his head to clear it. Sorry, job posted said we had to meet him in an old lifeguard tower on the beach, I think. Longhorn folded the piece of paper out to check it. Yep. Look only for the lit lifeguard tower, it says.
Great, I started grumpily. Gonna get sand in my fucking horseshoes. I fucking hate sand.
Time's money, ladies, Longhorn stated brightly. Let's get moving! I growled my dissent and followed behind Longhorn Perot, dragging my host sluggishly. I was in no hurry to wade into the sandy dunes on that freaking beach. We made our way across the remainder of the cracked pavement before making the abrupt transition to the beach proper. And I couldn't help but click my tongue and sighed angrily when my forehead sunk deep into the fine grains of pulverized rock. Great. I was never going to get the shit out of my coat. I slogged my way through the sand after my companions, becoming increasingly more frustrated each time I put a hoof down and it shifted beneath me, bogging me down just long enough to drive me up the goddess's damned wall. Thankfully, we didn't have too far to walk. I approached a life-size guard tower. Not what amounted to a really tall chair, but instead one of the towers with a tiny little office-sized cube of a room on top of a deck and stilts, with a ramp for easy access. Hang out here for a second. I'll talk to the guy.
Longhorn said as we gathered around the wooden planks that made up the ramp.
Won't be but a minute.
I heaved another huge sigh and turned and looked out the wire. In and out went the surf, dragging with it bits of seaweed dislodged from the ocean floor, depositing them on the shore, where they collected in large piles of dried, tangled brown clumps. The ocean breeze was steady and didn't show any sign of letting up. I was now tossing my vanilla white mane back into my face, despite my best efforts to sweep it aside. Stupid wind. Stupid beast. Ugh! Hey, Pearl said from beside me. I felt a rump up limply into mine. Still feeling nervous? Or you gotten a little more comfortable by now? I feel like I need to get off this fucking beach before I stab somebody. I snapped testily. It's a pain in the ass to walk, and the stupid sand's getting to places it shouldn't be. Smells gross too. I hate the beach. Hate it! Just tough it out a little longer, hon. We'll be doing it soon. Soon ain't doing a whole lot for me now, Perot, I grumbled. Gonna be finding grains of sand in my coat for weeks after this.
Alright, you two. Ready to get to it?
We turned to see Longhorn making his way down the ramp, holding aloft in his telekinetic grip a tiny, tiny little stoppered bottle, barely big enough to hold a scant few drops of liquid, which he held out to me.
Here, Keltrop, take this.
I eyed the bottle warily. The fuck is it?
Just take it and splash it on you.
What is it, Longhorn? I demanded, refusing to take the bottle. No way was I putting that shit on me without knowing what it was.
Just trust me, okay?
Longhorn unstoppered the bottle, quickly splashing its contents against the side of my neck, like some sort of perfume before I could move away.
It ain't gonna kill you. Quite the opposite, in fact. Now come on.
Wait! Perot called out as Longhorn tried past us, made his way back towards the road. Longhorn, stop! Will you at least tell us what the client said before you run off on us? It was this crap you just threw all over my ears. I interjected pointedly. It had a sort of sweet, heady aroma that was actually quite pleasant smelling. despite my aversion to any sense that could be described as nice. It reminded me somewhat of honey, or what I imagined freshly cut wildflowers would have smelled like, if they still grew in the wasteland.
It's perfume, Longhorn said dismissively. You smell like the bottom of a hoof, and a nice little mare like you shouldn't smell that bad.
I could tell he wasn't telling the truth. Not the whole truth in any event. Whether or not this crap really was perfume wasn't causing me any harm at the moment, and the thought of what Longhorn was keeping from us slid into the back of my mind for the moment, as we hastened to catch up to the stallion. He continued trotting along even as we caught up to him, meandering to the right once we hit the pavement. Once on the road, Longhorn moved swiftly and with purpose, flinging his crossbow off his back and pulling out the bowstring to lock it into place, pausing at the large wooden lamp that led up to the pier.
Okay,
Longhorn said with a sicky sigh. I felt my eyebrows raise in utter shock when I saw him fling one of his most powerful crossbow bolts out of his bandolier, before knocking it back against the bowstring. It was one of his very few enchanted geometric crossbow bolts.
Here's the story. Our client needs to clear out a rat wasp nest. They constructed right in the middle of the pier. He needs it gone so he can open the place for business.
Fuck me. Red wasps were bad news. Aside by the taint and radiation, the fuckers were bigger than an average pony. But their size wasn't the worst thing about them. The mutations had also turned their venom into a highly corrosive acid, able to burn completely through flesh and bone in a matter of seconds. Not only that, but he didn't have the sting to use it. Radwasps had the ability to squirt their venom from their stingers at range, making them an incredibly lethal foe. No point like dealing with Radwasps. No point with a functioning brain, at least. My jaw hit the floor at the news. Before I could voice my concerns, Perot did so for both of us. Longhorn, we're nowhere near properly geared for this job. I'll probably be able to keep myself alive with my shotgun, but the rate of fire in your crossbow is terrible, and all Caltrop has is a melee weapon. Well, okay, no faith. No way. Caltrop was right earlier when he saw the payout. This job is way too dangerous. We should walk.
We'll be fine, Longhorn says. He didn't sound too sure of himself. Just another day in the wasteland, ladies. Make sure to stick by Caltrop. Not too close, mind. Buzzing up is a good way to wind up getting us all melted to a puddle.
Wait! Perot called out as Longhorn started forward up the ramp and onto the pier. Longhorn, why are we going through with this? You told Caltrop that the job was too dangerous, we passed it up. And now we're going through with it anyway? What's changed?
Nothing.
Longhorn shrugged as we reached the top of the ramp, passed through the old gift shop on the way to the pier.
I honestly believe we could do this. All I need is one good shot with an incendiary bolt, and the nest will go up in flame. The only tricky part will be fending out the workers protecting the nest. Anything inside will be torched, but if there are any outside when the bolt hits, we're going to have to deal with them.
I lagged behind as Longhorn moved on ahead with Perot in tow, still doing our best to convince him to drop the job. The boards of the old pier creaked under our hooves, and looked curiously from side to side, so we made our way further along the lazy structure. Much of the right side was open for viewing, with a mere two old shops at the near and far end of the pier, granting a clear view of the beach. The left side, however, was end-to-end stands and kiosks. Faded old signs that advertised shops for curios and keepsakes. Even the vendors for cotton candy and fresh, piping hot hay fries. Just thinking about food was enough to make my stomach rumble, and I felt myself grow just a bit keener on pulling the shop off. Just a bit.
There it is,
Longhorn said, slowing to a stop, allowing us to step up alongside him. It had been audible long before we had seen it. The sheer size of the Radwasp's wings make it sound like an entire squadron of bombers was flying just overhead. Attached to the side of a tall building ahead of us was a massive ball of paper, constructed by the wasps for nesting. Even now they all flitted around it, some making strange, erratic, side-to-side motions before landing to crawl all around the crinkled gray surface. We got unnoticed so far, and we merely observed as the massive insects flew all around their nests, entering and exiting, regurgitating chewed-up wood fibers to build upon their existing structure.
If this is like your average nest, the queen will be in there, laying eggs,
Longhorn murmured, raising his crossbow and taking aim at the structure.
If I could tag her, this job gets a whole lot easier.
Alternatively, you'll just piss them off and the entire swarm will melt our flesh from our bones,
Perot whispered angrily, none too keen on drawing attention.
I still think this is one of the worst ideas you've ever had.
Trust me, Perot. Just remember what I said.
Longhorn said as he struck his tongue out, slowly squeezed the cheeker. Stick by Caltrop. A tingle shot up my spine as Longhorn's crossbow bolt took to the air, and I was with fascination as the enchanted gem began to glow hot, melting both it and the bolt down to a narrow streak of green plasma. From that point forward, the next few moments appeared to play out in slow motion. Both Perot and I went for our weapons while the bolt was still in flight, bringing them to bear in order to properly defend ourselves. Longhorn sent another bolt from his bandolier, this one ringed in red to mark it as incendiary, drew back his bowstring to knock it as the plasma bolt made impact with the nest. The bolt tore clean through the paper structure as easily as a hot knife through butter, pitching it clear through the other side and soaring out to flicker off of view in the distance, left behind a host-sized hole with a glowing rim. Several diseased red wasps came tumbling out of the nest and crashed noisily into the pier's surface, their exoskeletons making strange clacking and screaming sounds as they landed.
Stick close, hon,
Perot said, hoisting her shotgun and her cherry red magical aura.
It's about to get rough. You're saying a little worried there, Perot.
I teased playfully in an attempt to keep the mood light, giving her a ginger prod with the half of my high-up beard. Panicking wouldn't do us any good against such lethal creatures. We had to keep our wits.
Listen to Longhorn. Stay with me. I'll protect you.
Perot snored and rolled her eyes. Well, that was all she had time to do before all hell broke loose. Longhorn fired again. When the incendiary bolt hit the nest, thermite core detonated, setting the ablaze with a fire. Very small, albeit incredibly hot gout of flame. Tiny little flakes from initial detonation spread the flame faster than wildfire. It was only a matter of seconds before the nest had shriveled up into ash, leaving behind nothing but charred corpses of rad wasps that had been within. The rad wasps that hadn't been consumed by fire were not happy. My screen crawled as the buzzing sound around us grew furious, the air practically vibrating as red wasps shifted duty from work to defense. Perot Longhorn didn't give the insects time to gain advantage, and I cringed as Perot's shotgun roared beside me, loud enough to set my right ear ringing. Longhorn was resorting to its explosive bolts at this point, and I cringed when one such bolt found home in the thorax of a red wasp, detonating and blasting us with disgusting bits of bug guts. Our biggest problem at the moment was keeping nimble on our hose. Rad wasps tended to gravitate towards ranged attack, which meant that we had to be constantly aware of our surroundings, and ensure we weren't stuck with their acidic venom. Longhorn was casting most attention, and he hadn't stopped moving since we had drawn the attention of rad wasps, constantly gallerying around the pier in desperate attempt to avoid being hit by a barrage of caustic liquid. My frustration started to get the better of me the longer I watched Perot and Longhorn fight. I was stuck with my halberd, and I had no way of helping those two unless I ran up and got stuck in. I didn't want to diss Perot, but watching Longhorn run for his life was starting to get seriously under my skin. I knew how to kill things. I wanted to help.
Fuck this!
I snarled, galloping towards a red wasp that was hovering just behind Longhorn, lobbing globs of venom at him while he attempted to deal with the rest of the swarm. When I closed the distance, I cradled my halberd both forelegs and pushed myself into the air, with my hind legs to gain a little more reach, swinging upwards with the axe blade and grinning in triumph as the steel sliced through the massive bug and cleaved it in two.
Gotcha, fucker!
Damn it, Caltrop!
I heard Longhorn growl. I turned to face him with a chastened look. What did I do?
Told you to stick together. Get back to where you were and cover Perot.
Longhorn's orders were drowned out by a blood-curdling scream. A dread tore in my stomach when I turned around to face the way I came. Perot was right where I left her, but without me to watch her back, so he'd been hit from behind by a jet of acid. Even from where I was standing, I could see plain as day that the highly corrosive substance had eaten clear through her left hind leg, as he was laying on the pier, writhing in pure agony, and screaming herself hoarse.
Shit! Perot!
I screamed in panic, welling up beside me as I ran to her.
Fuck, I'm sorry!
Even as I grew close to her, I could tell I was too late. Her screams grew quieter, and her thrashing less energetic as I realized the full extent of her injuries. It hadn't been just her leg. Additional jets of acid blending on the small of her back
as well as her left side, and I could see raw flesh and blood through her corroded burning. I felt my stomach heave when I took a close look at the wounds. Saw that the acid was still eating its way through her. Nothing I was able to do. Perot was gone.
Longhorn, Sleaze,
I murmured, my mind collapsing into a thoughtless jumble of white noise as I gazed down at Perot's corpse. Perot was GAH! Longhorn screamed and felt my cats in my throat. No. Longhorn! I snapped to my host and then ran as fast as I could to the stallion, raising my halberd when I was halfway to him, swinging it with every bit of strength I had, bisecting the rat's wasp on top of him horizontally, and it buried us in a stinger in his chest. I watched him complete another horror as the venom burned its way out from his body within, eating holes through his chest before dripping on the pier beneath him. You fuckers! I sat, agreeing to the remaining rat's wasp, still buzzing aimlessly about. I'll kill every last one of you! Look here, buddy! You're all dead! Taking up my weapon, I charged the nearest rat wasp, stabbing out with the pike at the top and spearing the mutant bug through the middle. I swung the halberd as hard as I could, hurling the dead rat wasp clear of the pike and straight off the pier with a splash into the ocean beneath. For some reason, the fuckers were ignoring me, flying up out of my reach and away. I whinnied angrily before pursuing the nearest one that turned its back on me and flying towards the far end of the pier. No way were these fucking bugs going to fly away after killing Perot and Longhorn. I didn't care if they didn't have the mental capacity to feel pain. They deserved to die. Get back here! Come back and fight me! What? You can kill my friends, but you're too good for me! I started forward, but quickly skidded to a stop when the boards cracked beneath my hooves. Backpedaling as the wood fell out from under me and plunged into the water. The pier beneath me was so pockmarked full of acid holes, the structure of the planks had been completely compromised. There was no way I'd be able to pursue the goddess damned rat wasp to seek vengeance unless I wanted to go for a fucking swim. Despite every natural urge telling me to kill, despite the guilt I was feeling at having royally fuck everything up, I turned my back as the rat wasp drifted away, glancing at the corpses of my two friends. My only friends. Biting my lip, I moved towards Longhorn, making absolute sure that the acid wouldn't still burn through me, before carefully lifting him onto my back. If I couldn't avenge them, then at least I could pay them fucking proper respects. I sat on my back haunches as I settling the last pile of sand into the hole that was Perot's grave. I lugged them both down to the beach one by one, digging their graves hoof by hoof. Partly because I didn't have the necessary tools, and partly because I deserved the punishment. Burying them was proper. I gazed down on unmarked graves. I felt tears welling up inside me as the few memories I made with these two great ponies came flooding back all at once. I began to heave with sobs as they brought with them a crazy tidal wave of remorse. These two had been all I had in the world. My first and only friends. Taken from me for something that was supposed to be small enough to step on. They'd been taken from me because we needed money to feed ourselves. And there was no way to earn money in this lawless fucking pit to run errands for ponies. They'd been taken from me because I fucked up. It was some retard miracle. I'd been ignored by the red wasp. They'd been taken from me because this place claimed ponies every damn day. And today, this so happened to be the day that Perot and Longhorn had drawn the short straw. Thus another day in the wasteland. I stood and turned my back on the graves, looking out at the ocean and wiping away my teary eyes with the back of a hoof. Out in the middle of a bay, a cloud of low-hanging fog had moved aside some time, between when we arrived at the beach and now, revealing an old oil rig still standing tall after all these years. I looked on as two small dots took off from its upper deck and flew towards the city. I winced and held up a hoof to shade my eyes as the rig was engulfed by an enormous fireball. The remainder of the rig, following the explosion, slowly toppled and crashed into the ocean with a massive plume of water and splash audible even from where I was standing. Just another fucking day in the wasteland.